meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. We will now convene into closed session as authorized by Texas Government Code Section 551, specifically 551.071, 072, 074, and 082. The time is 6 o'clock. I have 3 different times. 6 o'clock.
Okay, it should be slobber knocker.
That would be a game.
Yeah. If I was in town,
I just did it. I don't know what around like that. Some special. For real.
can you get those fixed or just don't?
Well, I don't think I can get it. I think that bird pretty good down there on it. That's alright, gives me an excuse to go shopping.
Oh.
Honey. The only thing is boots can be pricey. I need a password. I don't have one.
I am so sick of that. Oh, God. I mean, really. It is board access. Well, that's other questions. Guess I'll have to Google it. There it is. That's my How are you? Yay. Word.
Good evening. Sorry we're running a little late. We will now reconvene into open session. It is now 7:17. Would you please join me in the pledge? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now consider the items discussed in closed session.
Ms. Gregg, I make a motion to uphold the administration's denial of the Level 2 student transfer due to the original request not meeting policy guidelines.
Been moved by Ms. Latham, second by Mr. Ferguson. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Mr. Knapp, Ms. Collier, Mrs. Latham, Mr. Ferguson. I didn't see your hand.
I'm
No,
abstaining.
okay. And Mrs. Foudy, and I am voting for it. All against? Mr. McDaniel is abstaining. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Motion for personnel items.
Ms. Gregg, I also move to approve the recommended resignations and new hires as presented by administration in closed session.
Is there a second? Been moved by Ms. Latham, seconded by Ms. Foudy. Any questions? All discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. There was another motion, another action that we need to take care of. Do I entertain a motion for the other item discussed?
Madam President, I move to approve the following resolution. Resolution for school finance litigation. The undersigned, being all the trustees of Lewisville Independent School District, do hereby consent and agree, pursuant to Section 11.151 of the Texas Education Code, that the following resolutions be and hereby are adopted by the Board of Trustees of the district. whereas the undersigned trustees believe that the presently existing statutory system for the financing of public education in Texas has and will continue to impair, unless reformed, the education available to the students within the district, as well as the ability of the district to provide an appropriate education to students within the district. And whereas the undersigned trustees deem it in the best interest of the district to seek an end to such impairment, and whereas the undersigned trustees deem it in the interest of the district to retain legal counsel in its efforts to challenge the statutory system now, therefore be it resolved that the retention of the law firm of Haynes and Boone, LLP, be and hereby is authorized and approved for that purpose, and be it further resolved that the firm be and hereby is authorized, empowered, and directed to file and prosecute a lawsuit challenging the presently existing statutory system for the financing of public education in Texas, and be it further resolved that the expenditure of public funds by the district be and hereby is authorized and approved for that purpose. In witness whereof, the undersigned Board of Trustees has executed this resolution on this, the 14th day of November, 2011.
Thank you. It has been moved by Ms. Fowdy and seconded by Ms. Latham. Any discussion? Hearing none. Call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. It's time for our open forum. I have 3 cards. First, Jay Turner. You have your whole family listed. Would you like to have them stand with you?
Well,
See the-
I don't know if they may be nervous.
Thank you.
Many people have given you facts and figures and data about the new aquatic center. I just wanted another point of view from just a regular citizen of Flower Mound. Flower Mound has done a great job of providing for football stadiums, schools, and baseball fields and soccer fields, all this sort of thing. We do think that the swimming facilities that we do have are just inadequate to really support the needs of the community. We see that we have good coverage with schools and the community and for recreation, all that sort of thing. But we see that for swimming, a lot of times we have to practice and use facilities outside of the community. We have to take drives to the Colony and to Keller, have meets and stuff, and even in Addison at Lowe's facility and many other facilities. So we see that there's a real need for having a better facility, and that we can pull in a lot of groups, schools, and swim meets from other communities and service them here. We see at other meets, people come from out of state for the larger meets, bring in their RVs and their campers and their 15-passenger vans and use the nearby hotels. So we see that we can pull in lots of people for these different events. And then, is it just the events? Is it just those short little weekends that we're doing things? No, we have high schools and middle schools and elementary schools needing the facilities. We have kids going to the Colony, Keller, whichever one they go, 5:30, 6 in the morning just to do the morning practices before they go to school. We have them used all during the school day, and then in the evenings we'll often have to go to the CAC or the Colony or some other place in the evening because there's a meet at some facility. We don't have any room, and we have to keep shuffling people all over the place. So basically, that's just another citizen's point of view that we can really use a quality, 50-meter type facility, and we have the venues for recreation. And what we now need is the sport of swimming to be well supported, and we can pull in a lot of people from other communities. Thank you.
Thank you. The board cannot deliberate on any subject agenda, so during open forum, we welcome your input. And the next speaker is Terrence Freeberry.
For your time. I'm Terrence Feary. I'm a parent of 3 swimmers. We live in the school district. We're members of Lakeside Aquatic Club. Lakeside Aquatic Club has 600 members. Most of the kids are in the LISD, and we have provided you multiple pieces of information about the opportunities for the Westside Aquatic Center. The 3 key points that I'd just like you to remember, that I know Charlie Porter has given multiple attempts at letting you know. The facility that we propose costs less than what it costs to build the facility at the Colony. It will cost less to operate that facility, and it will give the school district the opportunity to generate revenue. For instance, Mansfield, the pool in Mansfield is having Division II NCAA championships this year. There's some big events that could come to a facility if it's done right. The Colony facility is nice, it's beautiful, but it's not really set up to attract those kind of events. And you know, Lakeside Aquatic Club, we're in it with you. We will help you, generate those kind of events and those kind of meets. We even have a coach that is part of the U.S. Olympic team for 2012. So please consider the opportunity to expand the athletic facilities to include a top-notch swimming venue. Thank you.
Next, Steve Southwell.
Hi, I'm Steve Southwell from Lewisville. I just wanted to speak in support of the district leasing its mineral rights for the schools in Lewisville, the Kilo campus and the Harmon campus. I just want to let you know, I've been on the Oil and Gas Ordinance Committee in Lewisville, and we've been working hard on trying to make sure that we have the right regulations to let them do it safely and cleanly. And I'm pretty confident that we're at that point. I'm also pretty confident that with these drilling locations being 2,300 feet and 3,000 feet respectively from the schools, that we really don't have any problems. Now, I've looked at this multiple ways, and I don't think there's anything to be gained from holding out and not leasing. I think really what would probably just happen is either we'd have our minerals drained without compensation, or we would have our minerals permanently locked up where nobody could ever drill them. So either way is kind of a loss, and I think we could use the money. Plus, if you sign up, that gives you the opportunity to go ahead and negotiate for some extra terms. In our neighborhood, we negotiated for extra insurance and some indemnification, and we negotiated for water testing. So I would encourage you to go ahead and let the administration put this out to bid and see what they can come out with. Thanks.
Thank you. I have no more cards, so that we'll move on.
Ms. Gregg, can I have a
Yes.
moment of privilege?
Yes.
We mentioned the coach from Marcus who's going with the Olympics. I just happened to notice she's out there tonight. Coach Jan, if you'd stand up, just to recognize why she's here. Good luck this summer.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Next item, Raptor System visitor screening. Ms. Brown, information item.
Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Waddell, protecting the students of LISD is one of LISD's highest priorities. Improved screening tools continue to become available to public schools. Raptor is a sign-in and screening system. The visitor provides their driver's license or official ID to an LISD staff member. The staff member scans the license into the system. The system performs a live search against the National Sex Offenders Database. If a match is not found, a badge is printed with a person's photo scanned on the badge. If a match is found and the employee confirms that it is a positive match, alerts are sent to campus administrators for immediate response. The system provides security measures to keep sex offenders away from our students. In 2008, Raptor was installed in all of the 5 high schools. Since then, 3 additional campuses have added this system. These schools are Indian Creek Elementary, Griffin Middle School, and Liberty Elementary. Administrative consideration is to expand this system to include all LISD campuses. Each campus will automatically receive updates. Existing Raptor campuses are included in this proposal. Those 8 campuses will not have to pay an annual fee during this 5-year term. The total expenditure for a 5-year license, including equipment, installation, setup, and training, will be $176,623. This project will initially be funded with bond funds. In the future, the annual subscription will be part of the general operating budget. The visitor badges are included each year at no cost, which is a savings to the district of $6,700. This system will be handled by existing personnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next, budget amendments. Dr. Burnett.
Greg, members of the board, and Dr. Waddell, as in the past, we have regularly brought you budget amendments for the opportunity to amend the existing budget. This is really the first effort on basically a new system of a 2-month process where we bring the budget amendments to you as an information item and then present them in the following month as an action item or a consent item. These are primarily our end of the year roll forward budget amendments where we take the outstanding purchase orders that were outstanding at the end of the fiscal year ending August 31st, and those are rolling forward. That when those end at the end of the fiscal year, all that money is swept into the fund balance, and then this budget amendment reauthorizes those for the same amount unless there have been some adjustments in the various POs. We're also rolling forward the high school allotment money that was unexpended, and then you have the spreadsheets on the other amounts, a very small amount for food service that is a PO, and then a budget amendment in child nutrition to recognize some of the expenses that were paid for in the general operating, which were more properly coded to the child nutrition budget. If you have any questions, we'll certainly try to answer them.
Any questions? Hearing none. The next financial forecast. Dr. Burnett?
We know that as we've discussed earlier, when you passed your resolution, the budget cuts from last spring that the legislature undertook were significant. For Lewisville ISD, the reduction in state aid for the 2011-2012 was significant, was about in the neighborhood of around $20 million. It wasn't quite as bad as we initially thought because we had a growth in student attendance that the legislature did vote to fully fund. We bring you this information to give you basically a look ahead, an initial estimate of where we think we'll be, and we're projecting at this point another about $8 million reduction in state aid that we're projecting for the 2012-13 school year. There are certainly a lot of variables that can affect that, among the student attendance, our property values, other items in the school finance formulas, but those are the major ones. We haven't changed any of our expenditure estimates. That we just simply move that forward with no pay raises, existing staff, and those kind of things. As you well know, there are any number of moving parts to the budget and to the operations of the district that we'll be recognizing. We just simply wanted you to get an idea of what the basic parameters that we will be working with over the next few months as we start our budgeting process for 2012-13, and as it plays into decisions that we may be making or asking you to consider in terms of staffing and the kinds of things that go into our budget, since our staffing and personnel costs make up about 85% of the budget. So having said that, this is really our first foray into this. We will see a lot more in the next few months.
Thank you. Next, the TASB policy extensive. Dr. Burnett?
You have those before you. Don't want to elaborate on too many of them, except to say the one thing that we will be asking you to not consider the Update 91 version of CDA Local. We have spent the last couple of months on a significant and comprehensive review of our investment policy, CDA Local, and the one that we will be asking you to consider later on this evening as an action item is more comprehensive than the one that's in Update 91.
Okay. Any questions, anyone? Okay. Next, we're down to the discussion items then. Page 7, 13, 15. Okay. Dr. Burnett? Taxation of goods in transit as permitted by subsection JL of section 11.523 of the Texas Property Tax Code, which are otherwise exempted from taxation.
Well, as you recall, we had a public hearing on this last month, and we asked you. The history of this is the district had begun to tax it in 2007. We asked you to consider it last month. There was some concern over the impact of this, so we pulled it, and we simply bring it back to you tonight as a discussion item. You had asked us to get some information about it. It has, there are about, according to the Denton County Appraisal District, the goods in transit make up, in round numbers, about $285 million of our tax base. So if we continue to tax that, then that would be part of the tax base. If you choose to exempt that, then we have to be some strategy to make up that revenue, probably most likely through a slight increase in the debt service tax to cover those revenues. If the district continues to grow in taxable value, then this probably wouldn't have much apparent effect. If the district were to decline in taxable values, then this would be in addition to any decline. So our crystal ball is not particularly accurate at this point. We saw a slight increase in our taxable values last summer. If that continues, then this probably would have a negligible effect. If it doesn't, then the opposite would be true.
Any comments?
Dr. Burnett, we had done some research on our local communities within LISD, and I believe the majority of them were also passing a resolution to continue to collect the goods and service tax, correct?
That's my understanding. I think you have a spreadsheet in your agenda backup that was the best information that we could get from the North Texas Council of Governments, but that information was at the beginning of October. We've asked for an updated version of who actually done right. We haven't gotten it yet.
And the amount is 200 so million, which means LISD could stand to receive how much?
Well,
2.2 million.
it really has to be, it's really two parts, because the part that we can measure directly is the impact on the debt service, and that 285 million in round numbers calculates to about 1.1 million. So if you provide that exemption for your businesses or for those goods in transit, then that 1.1 million would be passed along to the remaining taxpayers to make up for it in the debt service. So with the M&O side, it's a little bit more difficult to calculate. We've run it through the, Teresa ran it through the formulas, the templates, and the state replaces some of the money, but we've calculated our net loss to the M&O side to be about $170,000, which in the overall scheme of things is not a very large number, but yet that's about 3 teachers.
Any other questions?
But we're already.
We are,
So-
as of right now.
Right.
One of the things the appraisal district did share their concern is that this is not a black and white issue on how those goods in transit are defined, because of the nature of the interplay between the goods in transit with the Freeport exemption. So their amounts represent their best efforts to identify that, but they acknowledge that should the policies of the various entities change, then there's a possibility that some of the classification of the property types may change as well.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Next, the Aquatic Center. Dr. Burnett?
I really didn't plan to speak this much.
Oh, well.
As you know, we had our first meeting of our bond oversight committee. We did visit with the oversight committee a little bit about the aquatic center to try to get a direction on that. I think it's safe to say that the response was somewhat mixed. As was noted in the oversight committee, there was some concern expressed about the athletics versus instruction, and the impact of the demographic study on the efforts of the district to move forward. And we recognize that, and the demographer is coming to speak to the bond oversight committee at the end of this month. We think the aquatic center is probably not subject to the demographic study, since it's going to be intended to serve more than one campus. It's going to be intended to serve multiple campuses. We think that the construction market is favorable to building right now. We think the bond market is favorable to selling some bonds, and we think the timing is that if we were to move forward on it, there might be a chance that the facility could be in use by the 13-14 school year. We also have the very real issue that at some point in the future, and we're not really sure what that point is, but we're going to have to make decisions about doing some significant repair work at the Timber Creek natatorium. So we don't really have a good answer as to the athletic versus instruction. We just simply bring to you the idea that there are a number of factors that could be argued in favor of moving forward at the aquatic center, recognizing fully well that we haven't resolved every issue that's out there.
Thank you. I've got a question. The Colony Aquatic Center, what was the price tag on that one? Do you have that?
Well,
I see you said 20 million for this, possibly?
The budget and the voter education materials for the 2008 bond had this as listed at 20.1 million. I think the actual number was 20,079,000.
Okay.
I might call on either Mr. Aldis or Mr. Perry to respond about the price tag on the colony, but I don't have that information.
Mrs. Gregg, off the top of my head, I do not recall the price tag on the previous natatorium. I know it was substantially less than the $20 million, though.
Okay. I just wanted to check to make sure, since we had heard that, we've had some input from about different ones and how that might possibly be too small. So I was just wondering what the price was on that one, so.
I can comment as a parent whose my very young children entered this world of swimming at the beginning of the school year. So we are at the Colony facility twice a week, if not more. And it is always very full and very busy. So we are getting our money's worth, and it is open, I know, late into the evening, and always, always full of kids from a very young age to high school. And I've been very well educated on swimming and had no idea we had so many swimmers in the district. But when I am at the Colony, it is in constant use. Every lane is full. And it's good to see kids in our community so active.
Well, I had the invitation to attend the Friday night, and I chose to leave my parking space for someone else because they said that it was so crowded, you'd probably have to park almost a half a mile or mile away. So that's good to know that something is being used like that. So, but since we are growing and it's such a popular sport, then I wanted to, I was just curious, and if that was quite a bit lower than this $20 million, might be good.
Dr. Burnett, two questions. What are we going to do with Timber Creek facility? And second, I have high hopes that we'd be able to incorporate some of the expertise that we have in the area, and I'm talking about parents and others that use the facilities in helping us in the design process. Is that possible?
The Timber Creek natatorium, it would be my suggestion that once a new aquatic center was up and running, that we discontinue that facility, both from a physical standpoint of upkeep and from an operational standpoint of keeping it going, and that our new facility would be able to handle the demand of that. The second part is if you give us the direction to proceed in this, our next step would be to get with our architectural firm, SHW, Jonathan Aldis is here, and put together a design committee, a charrette, if you will, to begin looking at what the design of the facility would be. And this is an inclusive process that would include not only LISD staff, but members of the community and campus staff as well. And get that started with the idea of bringing back to you, at the very least, a concept drawing probably in January, hopefully, that you could review, and then we could go thumbs up or down whether or not to proceed and or go back for further work.
Thank you.
Dr. Brand, along those lines, I think there's probably a lot of lessons learned since we built the colony not that long ago, things we can improve upon as well. Probably where Mike's going with as far as efficiency, size, parking, and all that.
I think one of our goals would be to hear from users of that facility and do exactly that, and find out the lessons learned.
Thank you. Anyone else? Next. Well, Dr. Burnett, next time you need to tell them to scatter it, okay? You're up again.
Well, this item on the sale of bonds is really a companion piece that if we have designed these to work in concert with each other, that if we go forward with the planning and design of concert of the aquatic center, that we also go forward with the sale of bonds. And we've invited John Martin of Southwest Securities to come and talk to you about what that bond sale, how it's poised. This is an extraordinarily historical time in municipal bond markets because a lot of the investor money that has gone from since the downgrade of U.S. securities has gone into the municipal bond market in such that I think John would tell you that LISD is almost on par with the United States government in terms of its bond rating. So anyway, having said that, we would not want to go forward with a bond sale if it's not your, if it's not your general consensus or sentiment to move forward with the design of the aquatic center.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Ms. Gregg. John Martin with Southwest Securities. Thank you for having me this evening. We're here just to talk about timing of the bonds, what that might look like. Kind of get a head nod from you guys tonight to move forward with this. We would want to try to get into the market with these rates where they are as soon as possible. We've, are set to do that. We've kind of given an indication to the rating agencies that we might be to them, subject to board discussion tonight on this. And I think there's a calendar in your packet, if I'm not mistaken, that speaks to coming back to you at your December meeting for ultimate approval, and we'll, between now and then, we would get all the ducks lined up and I's dotted and T's crossed and be able to come to you on December the 12th for really an approval that says we're still good with this and we're ready to move forward, and then we would actually offer the bonds a few days after that. So we would not go and actually sell the bonds and come to you with a bid on the 12th, and so you have another chance to say no thanks. But we certainly wouldn't want to move forward unless you gave us a pretty good indication that the consensus is to move forward with this. Interest rates, as Dr. Burnett said, are extremely favorable for borrowing right now. We're talking below 4% interest rates, and maybe closer to 3.5 today. So pretty crazy rates we're seeing out there. Great opportunity for Texas school districts. Now we have the permanent school fund guarantee. Lewisville can get that now. In the past, we had to rely on our outstanding AA+ rating, just below the AAA that the PSF gets, but that PSF helps us even more, and PSF bonds are very, very popular in the bond market right now. People love good, firm AAA stuff because, as Dr. Burnett said, the U.S. government is not even AAA anymore. So, tax-exempt AAA bond gets a lot of people excited. That's gold. I'm here to answer any questions.
Are there any other bond programs going on right now? Is the Build America bond thing over, or anything else like that still later on?
Yeah, the Build America bond program is over, Mr. Ferguson. And we're still, down the waiting list for the possibility that we could get some qualified school construction bond money assumed, but we got to have a lot of other districts that are ahead of us say no thank you. So that continues to go on. So we might, not know for 2 or 3 years if we're going to be in for that. I think we're in for $30 million, for that if it happens. So, but we've got lots of authorization between now and then that we may be able to take advantage if that should show up.
Isn't that the shovel-ready program that was put through?
Yes, ma'am.
Just for everybody that didn't know,
Yeah.
Build America.
Yeah, it was part of the stimulus program.
Yeah.
Hi, John. It's good to see you again. So the next meeting that we come back, you'll have both terms and rates available for us. Is that correct?
We'll be very close. We won't offer the bonds. What we'll ask you to do is, because of the timing and so forth, your next regular meeting being December the 12th, is we'll come to you and ask you to approve a parameter that basically says we're authorizing you to price these bonds in the next couple of days. If you see, then December 14th would be the actual pricing where the rates would be set. So you would be giving us direction and giving the underwriters at that time direction, say we're good with this so long as you meet these thresholds.
Thank you.
I have a question, mostly for Dr. Burnett. When do we hear what the Bond Oversight Committee that we just put together, what they recommend? Again, it brings back the questions of athletic facility over educational facility.
You have a little bit of that. later on in the meeting when we talk about the LHS auditorium. The Oversight Committee will meet on the 28th of November. I don't know that they've decided whether or not they're going to have a December meeting, but they probably will begin talking about making a presentation to you perhaps in January. But in the meantime, they will be hearing from Mr. Martin and our demographer. They'll be looking at the demographic study. They're also going to be looking at the use of the technology monies and those kind of things at their next meeting.
So if we elect to sell bonds, if we decide to tell Mr. Martin, yes, we want to do that, but the Bond Oversight Committee comes back and says, we think you should do B instead of A, are we still okay?
Well, that's a question that the board may want to discuss, because the Bond Oversight Committee is really designed to be an advisory group to you and to look at how the district is spending the money. I think it's very clear from an objective reading of the voter education materials that the district, as part of its bond plan, that the aquatic center was included in that. So the question could be not if, but when you build it.
Right. My question was there much discussion about the ninth grade centers at the bond oversight? And that's what I was hoping that I would hear something here.
They've had one meeting.
Right, exactly. And they chose the aquatics.
And we've got a pretty full agenda planned on the 28th of November to wade through some of these studies that we've been dealing with now for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I know they're eager and they're a capable group, but they do need some time to look at some of these issues.
Thank you.
So the short answer is no, we haven't gotten into the ninth grade centers yet.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Mr. Martin?
Yes. Question, I'm not sure if Dr. Burnett or Mr. Martin, the amount of bonds we're going to sell, specifically that amount will cover the aquatic center and the auditorium?
That amount is really intended to basically be the aquatic center and to be split somewhat equally between technology and your maintenance projects, because there's still a number of those. We have the money planned for the LHS auditorium should you decide to move forward on that, from savings from other projects.
So back to Ms. Latham's question, are we at risk if we tell them to sell the bonds, but then the committee says don't build the aquatic center? We could do a few of the other things, but we've got this bucket of money sitting there now, basically, is where we could be if we follow their recommendation, because it's still ultimately our decision.
Well, if you did decide, to sell the bonds and you, for whatever reason, decided not to move forward, then that money, you still have a pot of money that could be used for other projects, because you still have quite a bit of money left to sell. And as part of this process, Mr. Martin and I have been looking at the intermediate future and talking about what a bond sale in the spring might look like. We have an opportunity that we'll talk more about in the upcoming months, but we have some opportunities in the March, April, May time period to look at some refunding, and at that point we would like to talk about an additional bond sale to take advantage of that, and hopefully by then we'll have some other projects identified that we'll be ready to begin moving forward on.
Mr. Knapp, you can, because the actual ballot is written, that it's a very generic ballot, so we're not necessarily selling the bonds to the bondholder and the Attorney General for authorization purposes, and for the board authorization purposes is not specific to the aquatic center. You all give that direction once you decide to go out for bid and so forth. But for selling the bonds, as long as it's for improving or acquiring school sites, you're good. So if your bids were to come in super low and you had this pot of money left over, it'd be the same difference. So you could move some of that over to other type projects. Does that make sense?
We have begun supplying you with your, with a bond report about the status of that money. I think we get, I think that first report was in perhaps your September packet, and we're going forward with that, so you'll have a clear picture. What we would do if we go out for sale is we would load it up into a budget, but as any school district budget, it's subject to being amended by action of the board.
Thank you.
INS tax rate, you'll give us a view of that, I assume, in December, or do you have some, how 30 million would affect the tax rate?
Well, Mr. Ferguson, this issue would fall in the middle of this year, so the first interest payment would actually fall into this year. So we've got some surplus that's in our INS fund that will be used to make that first payment. So it will obviously not impact this current payment. We've got lots of wiggle room coming out, and based upon, as Dr. Burnett said, we're going to be coming to you in a few months to talk about how that ties in terms of trying to keep what you all are seeing as what your limitations should be on that INS tax rate. And so we're going to easily be able to fit into that and be able to have a fairly significant borrowing, if you also choose, in the springtime that we can package with some significant savings available to us from some refunding of some old debt, some of these old bonds.
Assuming property values stay flat, again, we'd still be okay?
And we've been very conservative.
Our non-negotiables are the amounts that appeared in the voter education material. We've worked within those parameters when trying to use our best guess and staying very conservative on what property values will do so that we stay well below what we promised the voters.
So in 2008, we had some, what in retrospect looked like rosy assumptions. At that time, we thought they were pretty conservative in property value growth.
Right.
So to make sure that we're not hurting our tax.
I think we were projecting the tax rate next year like 44 cents, and we should be well below that and everything that
I think
showing.
we've actually used the 42 cent as our ceiling threshold, so we make sure we're below, we're significantly below what we told the voters.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Next, Mr. Rogers, TASB policy EIC local.
Madam President, Dr. Waddell, board, thought I'd ask Dr. Burnett if he would want to take this one too, but EIC local, those of you that were on the board policy committee last April may remember this policy. Dr. Riddell, myself, Dr. Haynes, we discussed this policy with some of you last April, and we put this policy off waiting for TEA to give some direction about EOCs. And sorry to say, in November of 2011, we still don't have any direction, and so we need to have at least the part of the policy that we've given to you approved, with the understanding that once we get direction, and we believe we will, because EOCs are coming, and that's two different things. I'm talking about policy EIC, and the EOCs are end of course tests. We believe TEA will give us that direction. This policy, what we did last April was we wanted to allow this year's freshmen, and it's only affects this year's freshmen currently, to have the opportunity for online courses to count in their GPA, for dual credit courses taken at a college, maybe at the high school, to count towards GPA. Our old policy limited the number of courses that our students could take. And so we wanted to ask for those changes, and so we've been telling the freshman parents that that was going to be the policy, of course, pending board approval. Well, we're getting close to the end of the first term, and they really probably, freshmen and freshman parents, would probably like for us to determine their GPA for their first term, and we haven't been able to do this until you move forward with this policy. And so that's what we're asking, with the understanding that we will have to come back to you and modify or amend EIC local once we get some more direction from TEA on the EOCs.
Clarification, Madam Chairman, this is not on the action items, all right?
This
is
okay.
discussion? Yep. Okay, any other discussion?
Dr. Rogers, I wasn't here. Can you tell me what prompted the change? And I just curious why we'd want to allow a grade point average from courses that we have no control over.
Well, what happened, Mr. McDaniel, is first off, TEA guidelines changed regarding TXVSN, Texas Virtual School Network, and other school districts that then vetted their online courses, or what they call distance learning courses, through Texas Virtual School Network. We were going to have to count in our GPA. In other words, our student could go register with their counselor at their high school and take a course that may have been created by a school district in the valley that the TEA approved. And that course, if it was a core course, would count towards GPA, but our own online courses that we created and we've been delivering to our students would not count towards GPA, and it just didn't make sense that TXVSN courses count towards GPA and our own online courses didn't. The second thing really was removing the barrier of the limit of 2. You know, in today's environment, I mean, students go off to college, and probably a lot of colleges, a third to a half of their courses are online. And so when we were limiting our students by only allowing a maximum of 2 credits, we really felt that was very limiting and not in their best interest. So that's why we made the change.
Next, Dr. Rogers, excuse me, the Lewisville High School 9/10 metric system.
Yes, ma'am. If you remember back in September, so we skipped a month, we reported as an information item about the metrics that we would try to put together to measure evaluate the 9-10 campuses. And so this was something that the board requested last April. We have been working since last spring with the Farmer Focus Committee and with various groups, Dr. Riddell's Learning and Teaching Division, Assessment Office. Mr. Bonner has now met for a second time with the Farmer Focus Committee. And so we wanted to have time to utilize those 35 members of the committee and the expertise in our district to create a template of how we would evaluate our 9-10s. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bonner for just a second and let him talk a little bit about the actual document.
Thank you. Appreciate you all and visit with you a little bit about what the Farmer Focus Committee ratified last couple of weeks ago, actually. On the document you have, the 3 domains are areas that they felt were important to unify the campuses. Obviously, academic excellence, pride and tradition, and unity and consistency among the 2 9-10 centers. And then the individual attributes or the criteria there were items that they distilled down as being those most important things to measure between the 2 campuses. And I won't read them to you. You can read them, obviously, but you'll see that those things reflect the core functions of school. Grades, discipline, attendance, you know. How many kids are involved in extracurriculars, co-curricular activity? How are we involved in service projects? So what we've done for your review and discussion today is illustrate to you the domains we thought were important on Farmer Focus, the attributes of the criteria we wanted to measure, and then specifically how we were going to gather that data. And that's the last bit of information in there. And the rest of that form purports to be an action plan to do that. That's a little bit further down the line. Pending your approval, I guess next month, we would come back and talk about that in Farmer Focus, but ultimately in July we would gather that data and begin measuring. So any specific questions I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
So you won't begin measuring these metrics until next school year?
Ms. Latham, what we would do is gather the data in June and July of this school year, 2012. We'd have a whole year of 9th grade data and 10th grade data, okay? And then we'd set some goals. We'd see where the campuses were, and then we'd set some goals based on that, and then we would also gather next year to see the progress that was made. That's what we've discussed, at least.
This also says that you'll go back and look at, if there is data available from prior years for comparison, that you'd look at that.
Yes, sir, that's correct. One of the things that the Farmer Focus Committee talked about last meeting is establishing a context. And I think that would be I thought that was an exceptional idea. I'd like to credit Mr. Plunkett and Ms. Flores and Mr. Burns for that idea, because they wanted the group that was looking at that data to have a context of where we'd been and where we ultimately ended up.
This year will kind of be of an anomaly, though, right? Because you've got 2 ninth grade campuses.
Yes, sir, that's correct. However, it was the intention of the Farmer Focus Committee to go ahead and gather data on the 10th grade campus as well. Yes, sir, that's exactly right, Mr. Ferguson, to establish a baseline.
Mr. Bonner, what is the ultimate purpose of the metrics? What do we want this information? Is it strictly for internal to have to direct them? Is it to tell us whether the two centers are working or not working? What is the ultimate goal of it?
I believe you encapsulated it at the end, Mr. McDaniel. The goal of the Farmer Focus Evaluation metric is to determine the progress of the 2 schools. I believe the board charged the administration to establish a metric to determine exactly where we were going so that we, and these are my words, we weren't drifting aimlessly. And so I believe that's the function of what we presented.
This was designed to be a benchmark because we were having all of this newness and all, and we just thought it would be good to collect the data.
Mr. McDaniel, if I could just add, I think it was real clear, and I appreciate the direction that the board gave, that we need to have some goals that are written down, that are measurable, and not just something that we talk about or that we say, well, we think it's better by having 9-10s or not. So we wanted to have some measurable goals and be able to find the data to then decide and provide that to you, the board.
Thank you.
Speak to that question since I made the original motion. Say this captures even better than I was imagining at the time, and Mr. Rogers confirmed it. Dr. Rogers, I mean, what we wanted to say was, okay, this new campus concept, let's put some concrete measures in place. Say yes, this is going the direction we intended, or no, we need to make some improvements or changes to it. So it's obviously it's internal. The state's not making us do this. This is our district initiative.
Any other questions?
I have one more. What are the time frames that we're looking at to determine, our goals?
What we've discussed in Farmer Focus, Mr. McDaniel, is capture the data for the 10-11 school year, this current school year, for 9th and 10th graders. Come back in the summer, in August, first part of the school year, goals that we would consider to be reasonable to attain over the next school year, and then reconvene, of course, in July after we get the 12-13 data and see if we made our goals there. So this year would be about establishing a baseline. We'd come back after that and establish some goals that we sought to attain, and then we'd measure that again and say thumbs up or thumbs down, as Dr. Burnett said earlier, did we make it or not?
But you're also going to look at, didn't you say a little bit ago, you're also going to look at 2009, 2010 data as you have it?
Yes, ma'am. I think that, or I don't think, what we talked about in Farmer Focus Committee was establishing a track record of data where we could to establish a context. It gives some meaning to the numbers. If we come in on one of these and say that, and I'm pulling these out of thin air, we see a 50% attainment rate, well, what does that mean? If it was 30% last year, that's really good achievement, right? So we wanted to establish a context for that.
Mr. Bonner, besides looking at annual goals, wouldn't another purpose be to establish longitudinal data, looking at these schools over time and see what happens as far as longitudinal trends go?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got one more question. So you'll track these students that are there now, you'll track them through graduation, or are you just measuring the actual 9th and 10th grade campus?
Yes, sir. Very good distinction. The charge was the 9-10 campus.
Exactly.
Charge was a 9-10 campus.
But if we'll look on page 735, they have that timeline of their report and all, and it's going through August 2013. But we will have information that we can just keep ongoing. I just think it's good to track some of our kids, and we can even use it later, because we don't have a record of what's going on after they leave us.
But that only tracks at the 9th and 10th grade campus, I think is what you said.
Can I provide some clarification? Really what Dr. Wood said, the 9-10 information will be encapsulated by itself, but the 9-10 information or data isn't any good if it's not connected, for instance, to the college readiness goals of kids as they graduate Lewisville High School and other goals. So while it might be a piece by itself, it's still got to be connected to Lewisville High School main campus. So there's going to be an intertwinement of all that data. It's got to occur that way, because if we only take it by itself, then it's really sort of incomplete.
Right.
And so it will encompass, how those kids go on after the 10th grade.
So we should see college readiness improve, graduation
Absolutely.
rates improve, et cetera.
Pregnancy rate go down and all
We
that.
better.
Well, that's what, when we had the
Thank you.
ninth grade center, that's what happened. Any other questions? Too much information, huh? Okay, next. Didn't see Dr. Haynes. A proposed resolution for resignation incentive plan. Is she?
Ms. West
Oh,
is going
Ms.
to take
West, okay.
that for her.
Thank you.
We do have information on recommending a resignation incentive for the 11-12 school year. We offered it last year. We offered a 15% resignation incentive. We started out with 10 last year, remember, and then we went up to 15. This year we are just recommending go ahead and with the 15%. If not, we'll have those that would hold out until we got to 15. Last year was pretty successful. We had about 236 resignation takers, incentive takers. Overall, we reduced the budget by about 250 positions from the inventory last year, and it was a large part of the resignation incentive. We were able to do that through attrition. We are recommending looking at the budget with Dr. Burnett and leadership. We are looking at trying to make some reductions, additional reductions for the 11 or 12-13 school year, and we think this can be done through a resignation incentive. We did learn from our mistakes or learn from actions last year. We are looking at offering the resignation incentive January through mid-February. This would provide ample time to look at what positions we actually received resignations in to see if it meets with our targeted reductions so that we can move forward with whatever plans we need to for the fall. Also in the resignation incentive last year we did $3 million. We are recommending just $2 million this year because the number of positions really that we need to reduce inventory has gone down slightly, we're projecting. And I think last year we did about 2.7 million or of the resignation incentive out of the 3. I think we'll do just probably a little under 2 million this next year. With the shorter time period and with the increased parameters of who would be eligible, we are looking at offering it for individuals that are resigning or considering resigning midterm. They would be able to take the resignation incentive if they resign at the end of the first semester. We already have several individuals that have indicated once they get their 90 days, they get credited for a year of service, and they were already contemplating retirement or resigning mid-semester. If they meet the parameters of the proposed resolution, they could participate in the resignation incentive. And if we got probably about 15 to 20 of those resignation incentive takers in January, the program would almost pay for itself by May. Questions?
Any questions? Board?
Brenda, is there any concern last year we had so many experienced teachers left? Has that left a gap, an experience gap anywhere that you've seen this year?
Not this year, not that we've seen so far. I mean, we were able to fill, I think total last year we had about 460 resignations overall. 236 of those were experienced teachers. We were able to refill, we refilled about 200 of those positions with a variety range of experience. But we haven't seen any decrease, or haven't got any indication from the principals that the quality has decreased at all.
Are we doing anything to track that?
Well, we're looking at the PDOS data, looking at AEIS reports. I mean, everything goes towards quality. So you're looking at your AEIS indicators, your accountability ratings to see if there's an impact, but you won't know that until you look at data over a few years. We haven't seen anything that indicates it right now.
One thing on this, remember, it's a matter of choice.
It is choice.
And you're going to be getting people who are considering retirement anyway. So, you know, it's a win-win deal. That's just one of the unique things about it. So nobody's going to be retiring if they weren't thinking. Right. So that person was going to go submit their retirement, if not that year, pretty quickly anyway. So that vacancy was going to occur. It may cause people to say, well, I think I'll go this year, but nonetheless, where they're considering retirement, or they wouldn't be taking it.
Probably 90% of the ones that took it last year were already contemplating it either during that current year or within the next year. Those are the ones that it benefited. If they weren't planning on it, then it really wasn't beneficial for them.
Right.
We still have discretion.
Correct.
Dr. Waddell has discretion on whether to accept it.
Right, and you recall we had that discretion last year, where if we felt like we were in a shortage situation, that we could cut that off.
And our parameters this year for allowing the January, it's going to be really 2 dates. The January 13th, we will not accept resignations March 1st for them to take the incentive due to student impact. They could resign at the end of the semester, January 13th, because we do believe that we could find adequate teachers to fill those spots. And certified teachers, our applicant pool is plentiful right now. But we won't allow them to leave in mid-March, in the middle of a semester after students are already in their classes.
January 13th
is the last day of the first semester.
And we're obviously not looking to refill 100% of those that leave.
Correct.
Did you say that 90% of the people are looking at retiring anyway?
Last year, when ones that took the resignation incentive that did retirement, they were already contemplating it. When I met with them, probably almost 90, probably 90, even 92% of them had already said they were contemplating it within the next year or the current year. They had already been thinking about it.
Well, that being the case, does it really benefit us to pay them extra to do so?
The reason it benefits us is because you get the early notice. You don't have to look at drastic measures of, if you are going to reduce your inventory, of going forward with maybe non-renewing probationary teachers, RIFs, things like that. Those are the reasons it's an early resignation incentive. Last year it wasn't so early, but we didn't know what our financial status was. This year it's going to be very early. We'll be able to know specifically what positions are going to be vacated so that we can make plans moving forward. It works out in the long run. It saved us over $15 million last year.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Down to action items. The chair entertains a motion for consider approval of external PE policy.
So moved, Ms. Craig.
Moved by Mr. Ferguson.
Second.
Second by Ms. Fowdy. Any discussion? Questions? Hearing none. Ready for the vote? All in favor? It is unanimous. Next, consider approval of LISD investment policy. Entertain a motion for consider for the investment policy.
Madam President, I move to consider approval of the Lewisville Independent School District investment policy.
Second. It's been moved by Ms. Fowdy, seconded by Ms. Latham. Any discussion?
Maybe we should have Dr. Burnett give an extensive commentary on this.
Hearing none, ready for the vote? All in favor? Unanimous? Next, consider approval of LHS auditorium renovation. Chair entertains a motion.
Madam President, I move that we approve the LHS auditorium renovation as described to us by Dr. Burnett in our packet.
Been moved by Ms. Latham, second by Ms. Collier. Any discussion?
I have some.
Okay.
I have a couple questions.
Question?
As far as this has gone through the Bond Oversight Committee, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was at their first meeting?
That was at their first meeting.
How long was that first meeting?
We missed most of the World Series. That meeting was about an hour and a half to almost 2 hours.
What was the attendance level? How many people were there? We each had two people. So.
If memory is right, I think we had 9 there.
9 out of the 14?
9 out of 14.
How much background was given? Because you, considering you met for an hour and a half, it was the first meeting of this Bond Oversight Committee, how much information were they given on this particular project?
We spent probably 10 or 15 minutes on it.
Mr. Perry, mind me asking you, this facility is for 1,100 seats?
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. in front of you is for 1,100 seats.
How much would it cost for 850 seats, like all the other high schools have?
Now, 850 seats, presented to the board, $6.5 to $7 million.
And this one is going for 9.2, is that correct? Or?
1,100 seats was between $8.5 and $9 million.
Originally, we were just going to overhaul the existing facility, and that was going to cost us $2 million?
Yes, ma'am. Currently in the budget is what we're addressing is a minor renovation, which is mostly just repairing the brick facade. Does not include seat repair. It is minor electrical upgrades, code issues, life safety issues.
So we moved from $2 million to $6.5 million to $9 million.
Yes, ma'am.
On a facility, where's this money coming out of?
We're able to fund this through unallocated funds and savings from other projects.
Unallocated funds, we were given a 2008 bond construction and projects on page 775. Is it coming out of the budget remaining, or the funds remaining, or the unexpended funds allocated to projects?
Ms. Schauer, I don't have that sheet in front of me. I do apologize. Dr. Burnett may have that sheet in front of him.
On that page, if you look toward the middle of the page under bonds sold, projects not started, you have an unallocated amount of $7.9 million. And that money was whatever is needed to fund the LHS auditorium is contemplated to come out of that amount.
Okay, so the budget remaining is 7.9. We originally allocated 2.9.
Well, that doesn't include the $2 million that's in the
Original.
It's in the LHS rebuild. So if you added those two sums together, you have almost $10 million that could be used for that purpose.
Okay.
We will have some asbestos abatement that will be part of that project as well.
Okay. We're looking at a number of other projects that we talked about in the construction report, and I went and walked around a couple of our schools lately, and some of them I wouldn't want my children to be in. I wouldn't let my child go to a few of them. I'm not going to name them. And I see that some of those projects are on there. What I'm worrying about is that we're looking at a budget remaining of 7.9, and we're spending that money all on an unplanned expenditure, where we could do it for 850 seats for what the rest of the school district, all the other high schools have. It will be a better auditorium because all the other auditoriums are at least, thinking 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. And just considering, I know it's bond proceeds and it's on the INS side and not maintenance and operations, but we have to make sure that both sides of the financial spectrum for the district is spent correctly. So if we're looking at a difference of between 6.5 and 9.0, so $2.5 million. I think, and I've been on the board a long time, so I can say this, and I've experienced it all. I think the days of just saying it's only another $2 million are over. We can't continue to say, well, yes, we want to have a better facility. Of course, I always want to have better facilities for our kids, no matter what. But if we're talking about the difference between 850 seats and 1,100 for a district, for costs in the district, $2 million, where it could be used somewhere else. Maybe not today, but we might need something in the future. I'm thinking that personally, the way we're seeing money being spent and the way we have to watch both sides of the INS because we've had stunted growth and we've promised the voters that we wouldn't go above a certain amount, I think that it would not be in the best interest of our taxpayers. And some of them are parents of kids that would be performing in that auditorium. I don't think it would be the best interest of the taxpayers that we put 1,100 seats in where 850 would probably be more than adequate. Because I've talked to a few people, and I've heard the different arguments for and against. Some things I've heard was, well, the class sizes are larger. Well, Flower Mound High School has 850 seats in it, or 832. My daughter's class, it's junior class, she's got 808 kids there. They're not all going to fit in there. That's one of the things because they said that, people have said that the class sizes are bigger at Lewisville. Some say that we have outside groups that use the current facility because of its size. Well, we really are building this auditorium for our school use. And from what I understand, we don't want to go into the auditorium business in the school district. Taxpayers don't want us to go into this particular realm of finance. They already told us that when they defeated the event center pretty stoutly at the last bond election. So what I'm saying is what I would like us to see 850 seats. What would that cost and what would that look like? So I would move to table this until we can get a better, to see what 850 seats would look like and how that would handle for Lewisville High School. So that's a motion, sir. Ma'am.
What did you say the cost of the 850 seat would be?
Dr. Waddell, the 850 seats was between $6.5 and $7 million, and then we can take $2 million off of those numbers because we have $2 million already in the job. Mrs. Schuyler, to answer your question, we did draw the 850 seat. It looks very comparable to what we have at Hebron and Flower Mound and would fit in the same spot that we have it currently shown, the 1,100 seat, right on the end of the gymnasiums.
Thank you, sir. Well, I just to finish up, I know that Lewisville High School is going from would be going to a smaller facility. But it'd be comparable to all the other facilities and actually be better because it'll have better electronics and better speakers and everything like that because we've learned from the other ones being built. But we've always heard of equity issues from around the district. Everybody's a stepchild. Everybody feels like, they're not being loved. And this would be a perfect example of somebody's not going to be loved.
Madam Chair. Madam Chairman, I'm a little confused. We have a motion on the table. Shouldn't it have a second before we continue
sorry,
discussion?
I seconded the
seconded the
table.
motion. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I spoke to my motion. I think I have said all that I want to. Let's just check my notes.
Any other?
I
Go ahead, Tom.
I believe that it would not be fiscally responsible right now to spend anything we don't absolutely have to. Obviously, we're going to have an auditorium there, and I believe we should keep in line with the other high schools. That would be the fiscally prudent thing to do right now.
And looking at the spreadsheet that was provided for us some time ago, there were not many activities at the high school that held that really that many people attended. So I don't think I saw but one or two, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know where the change came from. Now, I'm sure that there would be community time, but as Ms. Kyer said, that we're building for school use more than anything, so.
Ms. Guyer, I'd like to point out that the original auditorium was sold to the Lewisville taxpayers as something that could be used by both the school district and the community. And while we didn't have that entire spreadsheet that you talk about of all the events, I think
Right.
it was over the last 12 or 18 months, not all of them sold out that facility, but several significant ones did, such as the
Ballet Nutcracker is about the only one that I can think of.
No, Nutcracker, Rose Cutting, the Farmerette Show,
Oh, okay.
and there was one other one. And I also contend we've spent a lot of money on fine art buildings that are new, and orchestra rooms and whatnot at the back. If those programs were to take off, we wouldn't have a facility to handle those. And while the main campus, the number of students that it will house is smaller, Lewisville is still spread across 3 different campuses, and that is the auditorium for those 3 campuses. Not every campus will have its own auditorium. Am I right, Mr. Perry?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Mrs. Latham, that is correct. Not every campus will have its own auditorium.
And am I correct that the reason this whole construction process started was due to the fact that LHS had not with fire sprinkler system and the city refused to grant another variance? So this was the whole construction process that has begun at Lewisville and has continued was in response to not being able to get a variance for that fire sprinkler system, correct?
Mrs. Latham, yeah, that was definitely part of the reason. As I've used the analogy before, we got to a point where it was not in the best interest dollar-wise to put additional money into LHS. We'd reached that point. My analogy is the car, $5,000 car that needs $10,000 worth of work to it, and that's.
And we haven't sold any bond money for any of the projects at Lewisville except for the field house that was added to all the.
We've not specifically sold any bonds for that project. We've been able to fund that through other bond sales and savings and unallocated funds from other projects.
From maintenance and whatnot. And you had told me a recommendation of renovating the current auditorium. While it is less expensive, it wasn't the most effective use of the money, and how aesthetically leaving the existing auditorium on the campus would not be aesthetically pleasing with the new construction that will be taking place. Could you maybe speak about that?
Yeah, that's a fair statement, and I will say, no matter if you go with 850 seats or 1,100 seats, we're talking about attaching the new auditorium to the front of the gymnasiums, basically moving it over towards the new campus. Again, opening up the front of the building. I think that's what you're addressing there. If you leave it out there by Main Street, you have the main campus that's set further back, and then you have the auditorium sitting out by Main Street. So that is true.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
No, let's go ahead. I'll go after you.
I know everyone recalls we brought this forward to you all in the summer and started discussing it then, and mainly for the reason that Mr. Perry just brought up. It's true that original project was a little over $2 million, but we just felt like that was $2 million that were not well spent. You're spending on something that you're not going to be happy with by any stretch of the imagination. And, there's a difference between economy and efficiency. It costs a lot less money, but you'd have $2 million, you'd still have a facility that's just totally inadequate. Not only that, you built a brand-new high school over there that this current facility would essentially obscure. It was our thought that we at least needed to give you the chance to consider doing something different, and even though it was going to be more money, that it was a better use of taxpayer dollars than to spend money on renovating that old auditorium. I think my personal view, and it is my personal view, for a long time to come, we'd be asking ourselves, why did we do that? It really, has come down to an issue of how many seats should the new auditorium have. I don't regret asking you all to consider building a brand new auditorium and spending your dollars on that, even though it's going to cost a minimum $5 million more to do so. that that's better use of taxpayer dollars than to spend two on something that would not be substantially different. There would be some fire sprinklers in there, but you couldn't tell much difference in there. You'd still have the same kind of backstage stuff. You wouldn't have a lobby for people to stand in. There weren't enough bathrooms for people to use. And for kids to use that, they would have to walk a long way. You know, I've been over at, and you have too, at the new building, and if you stand in that hallway and you look to where the auditorium would be, you couldn't throw a football. Well, there may be a couple of you that could, but most of us could not throw a football and reach that old auditorium from the front door of the school. Kids walking out there in the rain, in the cold. So we felt like you had to have the opportunity to see, to at least consider something different. The question really comes down to, should it be 850 or 1,100? And it was discussed in the Bond Oversight Committee. Dr. Burnett, could you talk a little bit about that discussion?
We had asked the Bond Oversight Committee to kind of weigh in on a number of things, understanding it was their first meeting and understanding that they were coming into the whole issue somewhat cold. We just simply asked, they didn't take a vote on it. We just asked for a nod of heads if they wanted, and explained to them the differences in the levels, the 850 versus 1,100. It was my impression, and afterwards when we talked about it, that the consensus was to go with the 1,100 seat level.
If I can ask for clarification, they were given both the 850, the 6.5 and the $8.5 million options in detail.
My recollection that we went over all the options with them, including the option of just the current scope of the work of redoing the existing one.
A couple of points. If we're looking at an equity situation, the other high schools have 800 LHS, and you know, by using that same standard, then we need to build a cookie cutter or swimming pool like they've got in the colony new. I think we're always looking for what's in the best interest of the child, what's in the best interest of the particular school. And if Lewisville High School has class sizes that are larger, if they're utilizing it for other things that need the 1,100 because they're stepping down from that, then we ought to move that direction. You know, the fact is we've had unplanned expenditures, just an enormous amount through the past years, and I think that's why we went to a Bond Oversight Committee to say, what do the people want? And I think this is what we're hearing right now, is the Bond Oversight Committee tells us this is their recommendation. So I think we've had too many unplanned expenditures, and this is not one, because this is what the community is telling us they want.
Yeah, if I can just piggyback, thanks, Mike, on that. The thing that frustrates me is when we go from school to school, they've got it, so we've got to have it. And we've spent a lot of money over the years doing that same thing, treating ourselves as 5 different high schools and trying to keep up with the neighbors, basically. We don't need to do that. We need to think as a district, and we need to build what's needed and what's needed at the time. We're not going to build, we did build 5 field houses all at the same time, so we're equitable there. Yippee. Even if we didn't need them. But, you know, we're going to build an auditorium now. We may not need a new auditorium again for 10 years. This is going to be the latest and greatest. Face it, it's going to be the latest and greatest. At least I hope it is. I hope we don't fall back and build the Colony swimming pool again. I hope we look at the latest and greatest out there. Efficiency, we need to save money on the operations side. So if we need 1,100 seats, I hope we build it. If we're not going to utilize 1,100 seats, shame on us for building it if it's going to sit empty all the time. We need to look at that. So I'm assuming we've got the need for it, and that's the reason it's there. If we need 1,200 seats, I hope we build 1,200 seats. Meet the needs of the students and give them what they need. And the rest of the district can utilize as well if it's sitting empty. But we've got to spend money smarter. Spend it on what we need. So, you know, I look at it as, yes, 2 options, and basically what do we need there? And Lewisville is the largest high school in the district. Now, if we're looking at rezoning here in a year or 2, we're not, that I'm aware of. Then maybe every auditorium should be the exact same size, because we're going to cut the high schools down to they're all going to be the same size. Then it makes sense, but otherwise it doesn't make sense. We need to build each school what it needs for its student body.
So speaking to that last one, since I made the last motion, was the bond site oversight committee also told for, say, the rose cutting, where I understand they have a big crowd, that I was told that when I toured the new facility that they have the 2,000-seat collegiate basketball pit, I was told that now they can have the rose cutting there because they're going to be they're ordering all these protective covers for the floor, and now they'll be able to have 2,000 people in watching the rose cutting. So that's what I was told by the people that walked me around that day, and that they were very happy about that because there won't be a bad seat in the house. Everybody can see what's going on. So for something like that, there will be a change. There wouldn't be an auditorium anymore, but still they would be able to have the rose cutting with even more people because now they have 2,000 seats, from what I understand. So there's other things that they can have there. They can have their senior night there. Marcus has their senior night where they announce everybody and, who got what, and they do their ceremony. They did it in the gymnasium. So what I'm saying is that it might have to be a little switching around, but as far as some of the other things, they do have a facility that seats 2,000 people in the round, which a lot of theaters are, and they're going to have the protective covering on the floor, and that's what I'm told. So if I see that as a taxpayer, they have a facility that seats 2,000 people, which is more than any size class, versus the 850, which would be perfect for all of the theatrical events and everything like that. Well, yeah, maybe they will be sold out, which would be great because then people will want to go, and they will buy the tickets and then make sure they fill that auditorium. So they do have something on campus, stone's throw or football throw, whichever you want to prefer to call, away from this new auditorium that seats 850, and then you have one that seats 2,000. So, yes, it's not cookie cutter because nobody else has that in the district, which is great. It's a beautiful facility. I love it. And we can use it for a whole bunch of different things, but they can use it first and foremost for anything that happens at LHS. So that's, when I'm looking at it as a taxpayer, I'd rather save the $2 million because you do have a facility. You might have to change a little bit on how it's operated and how it goes, but that's what I would, as a parent, I would rather go and be able to sit in the round and see my kid a lot closer than seeing him all the way from the back of the auditorium. Not really quite sure if that was them, but if I bring my telephoto lens, I'll be able to get him in there.
Well, I have heard from some community members, and one of the things that they said some time ago, and this, it's been months, but one of the things when they started the renovation, I did hear from some that said Lewisville High School is a flagship. That should be the flagship of our community. It was our first school, and it should be able to hold more. So at the time, they were hoping that we could build as large as we could possibly build. And I can see that there are times that we would need a facility that would be even larger. I'm thinking of the Dr. King program that's coming up. Last year, we had it at a church that we had over 850 people. We could possibly, we're trying to enlarge and include the elementary kids and all. If we get to that point, we could use, we would have a facility that we could use for many other district functions. So I can see, although it is more money than we had planned, sometimes you have to stretch and move that way. And being a fine arts supporter, I know that there are times that it could be rented and utilized. So I think it's time to hear nothing else. We can vote, I guess, on the first motion is to table. The second one was to table. So we would have to vote on that one first, and then we would go to the main motion. So,
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Do we have enough information to know if we need the 1,100 or if the 850 is sufficient, or was there just conversation around both and we picked one? I've not heard anyone say we absolutely need it.
I'll try to answer that. If I'm not getting at your question, just let me know. I think the,
Do we need the additional time, I guess?
no, I don't think it's going to change anything. I think the information we've given you as to, the uses of the auditoriums, you've seen that. We gave you the groups last year that used it and what those numbers were, and, so I don't think there's any more information we can give you other than that. I mean, probably most auditoriums are not full most of the time. So when you say if it sits empty most of the time, well, most events do not reach capacity of the auditorium most of the time. You can go in, you can hold student assemblies in there, and you can fill them up. You're never going to get your whole student body in an auditorium, period. Even in the new basketball arena wouldn't hold all of Lewisville High School. But most of the time, your events in an auditorium do not meet the capacity of that auditorium, whether it's 850 or 1100. There's times when it could. But we don't have any more data to give you that would say, that would show you capacities other than what we've already given you. So you already have that information. I'd say when we brought this to you in the summer and discussed it over a couple of months with you, we were trying to look and see, was there a preference, in terms of size. We looked at 850 and we looked at 1100. We gave you several scenarios. You've seen those drawings, even one that was larger than that. And we were looking to see, was there an area that you gathered around that seemed to and of course, a good beginning point was the 850, because that's what the others were. But then again, the auditorium that's currently there is much larger than that. I think the reason we're here with the number that we have, because administration didn't have a preference between 850 and 1100. But the reason for that number being here tonight is that seemed to be what, and I wasn't at the Bond Oversight Committee, but I do know Dr. Burnett didn't carry a preference for 1100 over 850 or vice versa. So it just seemed to be what we heard, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Burnett, from the Bond Oversight Committee that night, that seemed to be the number they favored. And that's the reason we're coming with you here. We really need to get going on the auditorium at some number so we can get it done and get it in operation and complete the project. It's going to be, what's the time frame that we're looking at now, Mr. Perry?
We would, Dr. Waddell, we'd like to have that open for school year of 2013.
And what else does that impact as far as the campus itself in completing this construction?
Well, if we make the decision that we are definitely going to tear the old one down, that's our first step. We need to make that decision, because if we're not, that impacts what we're doing this summer. If we have to leave the old one in place, it changes our current plan of how we tear the old facility down. Currently, how we're accessing our construction site is right over the top of where this new auditorium would sit. So we need to begin the design process, we need to get through the city process and the permit process, we need to get through a bid process and really get started on that. We'd like to have 12 to 14 months to actually construct the new auditorium. That time is coming on us very, very quickly. And so as Dr. Waddell said, we do need to take steps forward and move forward, whether it's 850 or 1,100 seats.
As far as the time you need, you have to decide that. You have a motion to postpone, so that's your decision. We just given you the information we have and with a recommendation and the reasons for that recommendation.
Well, okay, so I'd like to amend my amendment. Can I do that?
Just clarify.
Clarify.
You want to clarify the
It's-
postpone to a certain time?
What I would like to say, instead of postponing, that I would like to say that instead of 1,100 seats, that we approve a auditorium of 850 as previously presented in previous meetings.
You can't do that because there's a motion.
We've already got two motions.
We have the motion, the original motion.
That's what I'm asking. Is there something?
No, you
No.
can't do that. Unless the maker of the motion would accept the amendment,
Well,
and that's
I am the maker of the
You
motion.
made the motion, okay. But
We've already got two motions.
we need to vote on the sheet.
Ms. Latham.
Ms. Latham made the first one, and Ms. Kyer second.
But the motion to table is privileged.
So we need to vote on the table end first. So are we ready for that question? Okay. All in favor to table Let it be known by aye. Raise your hand. Seeing none. All opposed? So,
I'm voting in favor of it.
okay, so.
A favor against it, so don't worry.
Unanimous
So
then.
Yes. Now I'd like to make another
That we
motion.
will not table. We have another motion already on the floor.
Make a motion to strike and replace words.
Well, no,
Strike the word
because
1,100 with the, and replace the
can't
word
do that
850.
because the original motion is to consider, that was made by Ms. Latham. She can't change Ms. Latham's motion.
No, we're not amending it.
I can amend
We're
it.
making an amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
If,
It's an amendment, I'll make it. This amendment to strike and replace words, we strike the word 1,100 and replace it with the word 850.
according to Roberts, the maker of the motion has to accept the amendment.
No.
You need,
No.
okay, all
I
right.
second that. I second his amendment.
Okay, so what is your amendment then?
The existing motion, I'm striking the word 1,100 and replacing it with the word 850.
Okay. So that, okay. Is there a second to that one? Okay, second that one. All in favor? Let it be known by show of hands. Mr. Ferguson, Ms. Fowdy, Ms. Kyer. All opposed? Ms. Latham, Ms. Gregg, Mr. McDaniel, Mr. Knapp. The amendment failed. We're back to the original motion. The original motion is to consider the LHS auditorium renovation, the 1,100. And the second was by Ms. Kyer. All in favor, show of hands. Ms. Latham, aye. Ms. Fowdy, Ms. Gregg, Mr. McDaniel, Mr. Knapp. In favor. All opposed, Mr. Ferguson, Ms. Kyer. The motion carried. Okay, thank you, Mr. Perry. Our next item, consider approval of call for proposals to lease minerals at Kilo and Harmon campuses. Dr.,
I'll make a
I
motion.
entertain a motion, okay.
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Latham, is there a second? Second by Mr. Ferguson. Discussion? Is there any?
Yes, I think we should
Surely.
discuss this.
Ms.
Ms. Latham made the motion, we'll let her.
Okay, Ms. Latham, you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Ms. Gregg. This is a consider for, we are approving the administration to set out a bid for proposals to lease mineral rights at the Kilo and Harmon campuses in Lewisville, Texas only. The reason that we are doing this is due to Rule of 37 exemptions that were filed by the gas companies. Looking into leasing our mineral rights on these two campuses, as Mr. Southwell clearly stated earlier, gives LISD the opportunity to put in further requirements that we may have above and beyond what the current city ordinances allow for. So that is the proposal, why we're sending out the proposals.
Okay. Mr. Ferguson?
I agree with Ms. Latham. I think this is a good opportunity for us to have more control over what's going on in our schools and protect the, we have one of our most serious responsibilities as a board is we are the trustees of the district's property. And if one of these Rule 37 exemptions goes through, these oil companies are basically going to be potentially taking away the district's property at no compensation to the district. And it's in our fiduciary responsibility to manage those resources. So I think it would behoove us to do this.
Mr. Knapp?
Well, not only that, but then you have absolutely no say whatsoever because you haven't signed.
Anyone else?
you know, we've gotten several emails from people who said that we need to stand up and make a stand regardless and just say that we're against drilling. And the fact of the matter is, it's more of we're for the kids. And if the oil companies are going to take those resources with or without us, then we have a responsibility to make sure that our kids are duly compensated and that the district has a say in the game. And if we say no, if we make that stand, we have no say whatsoever. It's just they'll do what they wish. And now we can go in and say, we want this, we want that, we want to upgrade the safety considerations. And so it gives us a player in the game, it gives us control, and it benefits our children, whereas I see taking a stand as not benefiting anyone in the district.
I agree, Mr. McDaniel, and taking a stand, what are we going to take a stand on? The properties that we're looking at, the gas wells exist. So that if you see it as taking a stand, we are taking a stand in that if we have a lease, we can set forth our own safety requirements and our own boundaries as to how close those wells and lines can come to our property line, not just our buildings. So I think that this affords us not only possible another revenue source, but it also allows us to keep the safety of our kids and on our campuses number one.
It also, I agree with so far what everybody said. It also, what we're doing is we're asking for proposals. So for all we know, they might come back with something we don't like anything they say.
Yeah.
Send out a few more proposals. See what, until we get what we want for our campuses, and make sure we match all to keep our kids' safety in mind. Doing the lease instead of having them be able to get the Rule 37 just requests granted, and we wouldn't have any say. So it's best for us to ask for the proposal and see what comes in.
Hearing no further discussion, call for the vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Down to consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone wanted to discuss?
Oh, point of order, Ms.
Point of order?
What?
Okay. Yes, sir.
If somebody wants to discuss, they don't need to say anything. Let's just make a
Okay.
motion, second it. Anybody can discuss anything. If we need to consider something to vote on separately,
We'll hold it.
ask members to please ask to separate that item.
Okay. Thank you.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented by the administration.
I second that.
Moved by Mr. Ferguson, second by Ms. Collier, to approve consent agendas. All in favor? No discussion, huh?
I'd call it a consent agenda.
Wow. If there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. I thank you for coming, and the time is now 9:02. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ferguson, got you.